All right. I'm Christopher Lindsay.
I'm Esmeralda Velasquez Ayala.
I'm Elena Banuelos.
And I'm Kyle Blockham.
And this is our presentation on C.S. Lewis's The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
I will be going over the plot overview. So, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is about four siblings named Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy Provinci that live with Professor Kirk during World War II. On a rainy day, all the children went exploring around the house. Lucy, being the youngest, finds a big wardrobe and decides to go inside. Once inside, Lucy finds herself in a different world called Narnia. Lucy meets Fawn Tusman that explains to Lucy that the evil White Witch took over Narnia and enchanted Narnia so it would always be winter and never Christmas. The White Witch is trying to avoid a prophecy that said that four humans would overthrow her evil regime and reign over Narnia. As the children are making their way to the stone table, they meet Santa Claus, and he tells them that the witch's spell has been broken, which means that once spring arrives, the White Witch will not be able to use her sledge anymore and will not be able to make it to the stone table before the children. Um, Edmund is the first child to enter Narnia, and he betrays the other children. Um, he gets tricked into working for the Turkish delight. Once Aslam comes back to life, he takes the girls back to the palace so they can free all the prisoners that were turned into stone. Aslan, Susan, and Lucy later join the battle between the witch's troops and Peter's army. Peter's army defeats the White Witch's followers. Aslam kills the White Witch. The children end up overthrowing the White Witch and reign over Narnia. They become adults and reign over Narnia for many years. One day, the children go back into the wardrobe and return with Professor Kirk, where no time has passed, and they return back to being children. They tell Professor Kirk about Narnia, and he tells them that someday they will return to Narnia.
I am doing the biographical information. The book was first published in 1950 by C.S. Lewis, who lived from 1895 to 1963. The author lived through and served during World War I for some time, and when sent back home after an injury, he continued writing. C.S. Lewis, after being denied from being able to fight in World War II, became a caretaker of children evacuees, and from this experience stemmed the idea to write about children evacuees. The reference to historical event is shown throughout the story, which is set out to take place during World War II. The four children are sent out to live in the country with their old professor after they are sent away from London because of air raids during wartime. And this particular incident is what forms the frame story around the children's adventures in Narnia. In addition, the four siblings are drawn into the conflict in Narnia and forced to confront the horrors of war to help good to prevail, despite all of the adults in the real world's best efforts to shield them from it. The author during this time held on to his faith and was a believer of Christianity, which he implemented into his writings. Something I learned was that at a young age, Lewis rejected Christianity, but his friend J.R.R. Tolkien helped him re-embrace the religion. The story has a theme that describes the conflicts between good and evil that occur in the kingdom of Narnia, and like mentioned, the story has a connection with religion, as the main theme is of Christianity. One instance where religion is referenced is with the White Witch, who is the embodiment of evil and who is mentioned to be looking for her enemies, the sons or daughters of Adam and Eve. And this idea of the sons or daughters of Adam and Eve is a reference for religion. Another correlation to Christianity is of the great lion Aslan, who is king of the woods and symbolizes the power of good, as he is portrayed to be quite a noble ruler. Aslan sacrifices himself to save Enrune, one of the kids who betrays them, and which symbolizes the sins of man from the White Witch. Aslan has been interpreted as a Jesus Christ figure when, after his death, he is seen to rise and with the children gets rid of the White Witch to save Narnia. This idea of Edmund symbolizing the sins of man is important because it correlates to the traditional Christianity view of the sons and daughters carrying those sins for which Christ eventually died for. The book is a part of a children's fantasy series that came to be known as the Chronicles of Narnia. The book became widely known, and there was a film series made and a big screen adaptation of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. It also won the ALA Notable Children's Book Award, which is given to books that are identified as the best children's books. In addition, I learned that it has been adapted not only as a major motion picture, but an animated TV movie, a live-action TV serial, and a play. In terms of the book's significance, one thing I found was that the author dedicated this book to his goddaughter, Lucy Barfield. Lucy's name was used for one of the characters in the book. In the book, Lucy Pevensie was the youngest of all of her siblings and was the first child to arrive in and discover Narnia.
Well, I had the textual selection, and the one that we chose was, well, sir, if things are real, they're there all the time. Are they? Said the professor, and Peter did not quite know what to say. This text comes from roughly the middle of the book, where Peter and the rest of the Pevensie children, minus Lucy, discuss Lucy's belief that she has found a magical land in the wardrobe. This is before Edmund betrays them because of the Turkish delights, but it's after Lucy has obviously gone in. And the three children are obviously skeptical on the subject of her finding the magical lands and tell her, it's not real, Lucy, you're just making things up or just pretending it. But then the professor replies with the above quote. So we chose this quote as it's very similar to when children talk with their parents about belief and things that they can't see, such as love or religion. Like, how do you prove to someone that you love them when love is something you just can't see, but you know that you do love someone? Or religion, where it's like, how can you believe in God if you don't see him? It's through faith. And this scene is interesting because it's usually the adults in the dialogue are the skeptics, with the children being the idealists, like, but mom, it is real, like, and the parents are like, no, it's not, I don't see it. But in this scene, the professor and Peter swap their roles. And when the professor mentions to Peter that what Lucy thinks is real, in her minds, with it being established that she does not have a habit of creating make-believe, for Peter to open, and the other kids to open their minds into believing that what she says is actually true, it makes it possible for them to also go to Narnia, as they now also think that she may be right. Edmund gets in because he sees her go back into the wardrobe, thinking that she's just being, like, just going back in there playing make-believe. So he tries to, like, surprise her and, like, scare her, but he ends up going in there too, and that's where he encounters the White Witch and thereby later betrays them. And through it, then the others are also able to go, because then Edmund also wants them to get in so he can actually keep up his bargain with the White Witch to get more Turkish delight. But the whole the text itself speaks to how in many situations where two parties, usually parents and their children, try to convince one another to believe that something is indeed there, even though they can't see it. And later in the series itself, belief and faith in the unseen is present throughout all the books, not just this one, because many of the events require that the characters believe in Aslan, where then he will actually be visible to them. In the direct follow-up film in Prince Caspian, there is actually a very notable scene where Lucy is able to see Aslan because she still believes in him, while the others are like, well, I don't see him, so he must not be there. But then when they start to think that he is there, then they actually can see him, and then it moves on from there. The other books have something very similar to this, and all of them, but not necessarily with the Pevensie children, with other characters as well.
I'm going to be doing the textual connection. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe relates to our previous reading, B.J. Novak's The Book with No Pictures, as both encourage the children to use their imaginations rather than encouraging them to explore the world in any specific way. While The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe does aim to add imagination as a way to deal with the hardships of reality, both books come from an angle that suggests that the imagination is a crucial tool for any child and that it should never be hindered. Novak's story does this by creating an interactive narrative in the collective imagination of the reader, the adult, and the child being read to. This is kind of similar to how in Dungeons & Dragons, maybe a game master and the players both share a collective scene in their imagination. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe does this by only letting children berate Lucy for what she claims to find, but having a higher authority, their caretaker, Professor Kirk, confirm her theories and make the children question the validity of their berating Lucy. This kind of is a reversal of the roles where the adults would usually berate a child for their imaginative spoutings, but in this sense, the adult defends, kind of overriding the older children. As for our handout, the first page of our handout goes over a short synopsis of the story for people that may want kind of a less spoilery view of it. So if they want to just go into the book with just a small description, this is how it would go. Set in the backdrop of World War II, 4 children evacuees stumble upon a magical wardrobe in the home of their new caretaker. The wardrobe transports the children to the magical world of Narnia, where mystical creatures, talking animals, and evil witches all reside. The children get caught in a war in Narnia in which they are destined to resolve it. The story unfolds as a magical adventure where children learn to grow up by accepting the childhood power of imagination. We also go into like simple character descriptions of important characters in the story, such as the 4 Pevensie children, Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy. We also go into description of Aslan because he's the most symbolic figure in the story, as well as the White Witch, who is the main protagonist of the story. We also, on the second page, was a crossword puzzle that has questions that can easily be answered. Well, a lot of the questions can easily be answered by following this presentation, but there are a few questions, such as who Aslan's father is, that can only really be found by reading the book closely. So in conclusion, the story serves as a message to kids that imagination is a tool that gives agency to children. It also serves as a cautionary tale to adults to allow children to process hardships of reality in their own way. Although the norm often dictates that adults should steer children towards thoughts and ideas that are more synonymous with their own, this story advocates that children should be given room to make mistakes, learn from their actions, better themselves, and make sense of the world in their own way. And that adults should guide children and not force them to fit a mold. And that concludes our presentation.